13 Studios, it's Houston's own Debra Duncan.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. In the movie It's a Wonderful Life, George Bailey is a family man who learns that life itself is the most precious gift of all. Like a modern-day George Bailey, J.B. Boykin has also learned this lesson, but only after tasting the highs of drugs and sinking to life's deepest lows.
This was a street that was infested with drugs. One time, both dealers and users, young and old, would stand out. All you had to do was come up to the stop sign. Just the entrance of that gateway bring back the memory of that night. You know, money in my pocket. I even had a 10-speed bike that was worth every bit of $500. And rather than take my money or the bike, the guy would rather humiliate me by asking for sex. And the lowest point was when I was in my 6th year of being addicted. Principles had went out the window, morals had dropped. And I was in a drug area where some of my children, friends lived. Not knowingly, a godson saw me and without thinking rushed to a football game where my children were and told them that they had seen me at a crack house. And other children heard it. I remember a night I'd been in a crack house for 3 days. Gave no thought to my children, and I remembered one Wednesday morning that my daughter was being inducted into the Honor Society. And I left the crack house and went to the schoolhouse. Ungroomed. To hear my daughter speak to a group of kids, other kids dressed nice. The words of my daughter, when she said, I may not be able to go on all field trips. I may not be able to financially do the things you do, but you didn't elect me president for that. You elected me for my character. October 17, 1988 was my turning point. I still had my limousine service, so there was a nightclub in the city called D's and G's. I transported a local celebrity there and back to the airport. And after leaving, went and bought more dope with the last money I had. I was with my sister and her children, daddy, and I was sitting in the back seat of that car. She had a Chevy Impala 4-door. And I got onto some bad dope for the first time. And I hit that pipe, and my heart just began to palpitate just over time, just so fast, until really the oxygen was leaving my body. I couldn't breathe. And it was at that moment that I was losing consciousness, and in a distance I could hear my sister saying, what's going on? But they tell me now that even they were afraid to look in the back seat. I believe it was that night that God sent the Holy Spirit for me. I was laying back on the back seat, and I just felt this energy. I just felt this energy. It was so loving and kind. And I remember saying, God, if you just don't let me die a crack addict, I didn't want that.
Do you believe in angels?
Yes, I do. I do. I know there's one standing with me right now.
Who is that angel?
I think that is my brother that was murdered in 74. He was my life. He always told me I was special. I never heard it from my father. I never had anybody tell me they were proud of me but him. And Dad took him. But he's still with me telling me, you can do it. You can do it. You are somebody. I do believe in angels.
Before your crash, you told me the things that were of value to you were you had the house, the cars, designer clothes, furs, and you realized what's really important is not the things.
Not the things. It's not. I like me today, Deborah, in my weakness and my strength. But I know my worth now. I don't need approval from anyone. I know my life is worth something today.
It's priceless.
It's priceless, and it's a wonderful life.
JB, you have been sober for 12 years and 1 month.
28 days.
And there are a lot of people out there who are dealing with drug addiction.
Yes.
And your message to them is?
There's hope after dope.
You also found a wonderful cause with this because you had been there, because you know what it's like and how easy it is for, quote unquote, an upstanding person to fall into this. You've made your life kind of a mission, if you will. You have a mission to help other people.
Really?
Yeah.
And that mission is In Action. And that's the name of my organization, In Action Shelters. And it's a transitional house, really just for anyone that is suffering. Yeah. If you can make it to the door, there's help on the other side. Yeah. We specialize in holistic healing because one has to heal from the inside out. You can dress up an addict in a 14-day, 90-day program, and you just dress them up on the outside. Because if you never get them to feel or to get in touch with the inside, they're always vulnerable.
Yeah, and that's how a lot of people fall into trouble to begin with. Yeah. They aren't in touch with the inside.
They're not.
There are a lot of things that helped to pull you through, and one of those things, your children. And they are with us today, Kenya and Michael. A lot of kids would be so angry and obviously hurt at a parent who would have this type of addiction, and you kind of did this a little bit later on in life. For you two, I'm sure you went through a range of emotions, but what made you stick by Mom, even in the worst of times?
Through it all, I think it was the unconditional love that, I have personally for my mom. Through her addiction, no matter where she went and when she left, I always knew she was coming back. She made sure that we seen her. Whereas a lot of kids are out there and they don't know when and if their mother is coming back. Yeah. Mom is mom, no matter what, and love is love. So really, no matter what she did, the love was still there. Today, I don't even give a second thought on how my life was back then. Yeah. I just look forward to how it is now. She's here with me whenever I call, I need her. To see her here, as beautiful as she is, as opposed to 12 years ago, you hated her in your presence, and that's just being real.
And Michael, for you, what was the toughest time? And then on the other side, what's the most wonderful time for you now?
The most wonderful time is just having her here now, sober. Yeah. And I don't worry about what happened a long time ago.
Yeah. What do you have to say to kids out there whose parents are drug addicts and these kids are having to deal with it because it affects the whole family?
Mm-hmm. Well, all they can do is just keep loving them and be supportive. Pray.
Yeah, pray. Well, JB, you have a new life now.
Yes.
And how I first met you was you were announcing a fashion show, which is your area of expertise.
That's what they say.
That's what we know. In fact, we're going to put you to the test right now. We have somebody in the audience there with a sparkly, nice outfit there. Sparkly. Ma'am, could you stand up for us? Okay. Oh, no. Remain standing. Remain standing. And as you are modeling, JB's going to show us how she does it. All right, JB, hit it.
Scene number 3 is putting on the Ritz. We're going to take you down Broadway. We are going to sparkle, as you can see, with Miss BBW. Big, beautiful woman in a mannequin, iridescent silver wide lapelled collar. Takes you 50 years into the millennium, but in style.
All right. JB, thank you very much for not being ashamed to tell your story, because you know how many people you help when you do that. And thank you for the work that you do with the shelter.
Thank you for having me, Deb.
Thank you very much, JB. Still to come, we'll meet a child star for It's a Wonderful Life who's had to cope with a number of tragedies, including a parent's darkest nightmare. But first, we'll meet a family who learned how quickly life can take a tragic turn when you least expect it. It's an unbelievable story of faith and hope coming up next. Stay with us. His brother George was there to save the day. But for a modern-day family in LaPorte, after their young son fell into the dark waters of Lake Livingston, no one could find him, and his father feared the worst. His parents, Jerry and Pam Adams, are with us today. Good morning.
Good morning.
Average day, actually kind of a better than average day, out in the lake having a good time. And then how did he fall in the lake?
Well, the waves and the wind capsized the boat, and actually there was 2 boats that had capsized.
Pontoon boats. Yeah.
And it wasn't to be found.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
And of course, that was the first concern. You're thinking, if we can just find him, if we can just find him. But you also know that if he's underwater, if Dalton was underwater, every second counted. Were you watching the clock?
Oh yeah. I mean, as much as I could. I mean, I was on the dock. You know, and that's probably the worst feeling I ever had in my life.
You feel helpless.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I wanted to jump into the water. I looked out over the lake, and I couldn't see him anywhere. Yeah. I just wanted to jump in and go out there and do it. But
and just hoping that maybe he's on shore someplace as opposed to in the lake, but you pretty much knew he was in the lake. Yeah. And then you finally hear someone's found him. Was there a sense of relief or a sense of great fear?
Well, me and my mother-in-law was looking for him, and her brother came to us and told the one that gave him CPR and told us that they were at the hospital. So he wouldn't tell me why. I said, just tell me what's wrong, what's wrong? He said, all I'll tell you is that he was crying. Well, he wasn't crying, but he just wanted to make me feel better. When we got to the hospital, Dalton was just laying there and just making a gurgling sound, and he had an oxygen mask on him, and I said his name, and he wouldn't open his eyes. And I told him to squeeze my finger, and there was no response. And they told me, we don't know how long he's been under the water. We don't know how long that he's been without oxygen, but we're life-flighting him to Herman Hospital. So I got on the phone with all my family and my church so that they could start praying. And then I found out that they was going to cancel life flight. The ambulance came and took him. He had everything against him.
Right. In fact, they had pretty much figured out that he had been underwater for at least 10 minutes. Right. Probably more. And 10 minutes without oxygen. Doctors told you probably what was going to happen.
His uncle said that when he came out of the water that he was blue. He was totally lifeless. When my husband was trying to help with CPR, he turned him over, and when he turned him over, he just hit his head. Because he was lifeless, so he just fell and hit his head on the concrete, and he had a big knot on his forehead. But they didn't get any water out of his lungs till he got to Herman, which was almost 4 hours later after the accident. And at 1:30 in the morning when I went back there, water was still coming out of his lungs. And so he was in a coma and for 3 days.
That had to be agonizing.
But I knew, I believe in God, and I believe in the power of prayer, and I believe in Jesus. And I knew that he is He is a miracle God. And I was just crying out to him. All my family, they kept me so, you know, Pam, don't doubt, whatever the doctors say, just keep believing that your little boy, he's going to wake up and be the same little boy.
When did you realize the power of prayer?
The whole time I felt peace.
The whole time you felt peace?
The whole time I felt
peace
in this whole situation. And then I seen it right before my eyes.
Yeah.
And my husband carried him when he was lifeless, so my husband knows.
Yeah. But then he woke up. He was out of the coma. His first words?
Well, the first thing that he said was he wanted his toys, because my sister kept saying, if you just wake up, Dalton, I have toys for you. So when he first woke up, he was trying to tell us, but because he had been he had a ventilator, he couldn't really talk. And so he was like saying, I want my toys. And so finally we understood that he was saying, I want my toys.
Well, not only did you realize the power that was there, but so did Dalton. And Dalton is with us this morning. Dalton, come on out here. Hey, buddy. Hey, Dalton. What happened when you were unconscious and we didn't know what was going to happen with you? You say somebody saved you. Who was that you said who saved you? Hey, I'll give you a toy if you tell us, Dalton. You said to your parents that you saw an angel. Well, Dalton, let me tell you something here. I understand you collect angels now, right? Well, guess what? There's a woman who gave me a collection of angels, and she told me if I ever saw somebody or met somebody who could use another angel in their life, to give it to them. So I have one of these angels for you, and I have one just like it at home, but here's a crystal angel for you. But it is very interesting because what did he tell you about that rescue?
He told us that an angel came, and I was like, well, what did the angel do? And he said, took me to Jesus. Wow. And then he didn't want to say nothing for a long, long time. I kept asking him, and one day we was at my mom's, and she has a ceramic angel about this tall, and I picked it up, and he just said, oh, and he hugged it, and he said, Mama, can I have this angel, please? And then I said, Dalton, what happened with the angel? And put me in his arms, and took me up to Jesus, and Jesus touched my head and told the angel to put him back in himself.
And he did.
And there was a box. He says there was a box.
And that's why you're back with us today. Well, Dalton, I'm glad that you
survived. And was your angel
that.
big or little?
Big. Yeah. You had a big angel. Well, Dalton, I'm glad you're here with us, and thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now you just get back there and play with your toys.
I don't have no toys.
Okay, well, we're going to have some toys for you. Okay. Thank you very much, you two. And what a blessed, wonderful life it really is for you.
And I just have to say, I give God all the glory.
Yeah. Amen. Coming up next, an innocent little girl was scarred for life after a horrible tragedy. But could she also overcome bitterness and depression afterwards? We'll find out next. Stay with us.
Mary, I know what I'm going to do tomorrow and the next day and next year and a year after that. I'm shaking the dust of this crummy little town off my feet, and I'm going to see the world. Italy, Greece, the Parthenon, the Colosseum. Then I'm coming back here and go to college and see what they know. And then I'm going to build things. I'm going to build airfields. I'm going to build skyscrapers 100 stories high.
George, come on home, quick. Your father's had a stroke.
Mary, I'm sorry, I've got to go.
Come on, George, let's hurry.
You got a doctor?
Yeah.
Candle's there now.
Sometimes when you think you've got all your dreams in order, life throws you a curveball and sends everything into a tailspin. That's exactly what happened to a little girl and her relatives when a tragedy struck them out of nowhere, and a shattered family was left behind to pick up the pieces.
Hannah's been almost killed 3 times since she's been born. I know Hannah is here for some reason that's very important.
We all loaded up in a car and we drove. drove for a while. We were singing songs, and we stopped at the light. And that's all I remember.
I was trying to get some laundry done. It was close to midnight, and the phone rang. And immediately, I got a really uneasy feeling because of being so late. My husband answered the phone, and I remember the first words that came out of his mouth were, "Bobby's dead." And immediately, I just fell on the floor, and I just started screaming. I just knew it was horrible. I just had a feeling even before he said it was horrible. And then I guess he was in shock because he just started blurting out. And then he said, "Philip's dead." And it just felt like everything just was getting worse and worse by the minute. And I was waiting to hear my daughter's name, you know. It was bad enough to hear their names, and then I was waiting to hear Hannah's name. And I was just screaming. I just couldn't get a grip. I was like, you can't be comforted. There's no comfort to be found in a moment like that. It's the most gut-wrenching feeling you could ever get. A drunk driver had been drinking all day long since noon, and he was 3 times the legal limit in alcohol. And he was coming home, and him and his wife, and they both fell asleep. And he had all the lanes on that side and most on the other side all clear, and he went just right straight for the back of my sister's vehicle. And when he did, it exploded. They didn't give us a lot of hope for Hannah. In fact, the life flight lady told us that Hannah was not going to make it. I thought she was going to die. And I, for a moment, had a thought that I couldn't live if she didn't live. If she didn't make it, I wasn't going to make it. I can't imagine life without any of my children and the pain that anybody that's lost a child would go through. When Hannah was first burnt, and it was a horrible ordeal, we had to do changing of bandages all day long. It would be an 8-hour to 10-hour day job. These pressure garments that you had to pull on, it would just take everything, and she would cry. I would have to do debris baths where you had to pull things, her skin off of her, the burns, you have to pull them off, and she would scream, and it was just horrible.
Like, Mommy, she had to pick dead skin off of me with tweezers like this. Like, and right here on my foot, I can't feel nothing right there. Somebody could like stab a knife in my foot.
It's been hard. I've watched people stare. I've heard them whisper when they think I can't hear them.
Just stop being mean, because it can happen to them too. It can happen to anybody.
She doesn't complain very often. She's very, very seldom. Once in a while, she's taken her picture, what she used to look like, and held it, and a little tear came down her face. And she just said, "I wish I still looked like that." To see Hannah running around, laughing, giggling, playing with puppies, going to dances, looking forward to the 5th grade dance. She just has a zest for life, and to ever have thought that I've lost her is just a horrifying thought, and it makes you want to live, and it doesn't look like it in the beginning at all, but it does.
With all the pain that Hannah's been through, she says it's still a wonderful life. Still to come, the little girl who knows an angel when she hears one.
Daddy! ZuZu, my little ginger snap, how do you feel?
Fine! Not a smidge of temperature.
Not a smidge of
The real ZuZu joins us coming up, but first, we'll meet a man who knows the value of being alive and believes an angel saved his life. His incredible story next.
They'll never close us up today. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bingo! We made it. Close the door, Eustace. We made it. Look, we're still in business. We've still got $2 left. Well, look, let's have some of that. Let's celebrate. Get some glasses, Kelly. Well, a couple of financial wizards.
Those Rockefellers.
Like the building alone Born in Bedford Falls, Harry Gordon Jewelers was an institution here in the Bayou City for many years. And just like George Bailey, Harry thought his business would never close. But 6 years ago, 2 bullets changed all that. And if not for a miracle, Harry would not be alive today. And he's with us this morning. Good morning, Harry.
Thank you.
So many of us, when life is going on just wonderfully, we never stop to think about how thankful we should be for that, because it can all change in an instant, as it did for you 6 years ago. What happened?
Well, to be very candid, on January the 11th at 7:32 p.m., 1994, I was sitting in my car, and a man opened the door of the car and put a gun to my neck and fired. And very candidly, what happened, he said, "Get out," and immediately fired.
You didn't have a chance to say anything to him or at all, but you did exactly what he said, and he still fired.
Yes, what happened is he fired, and I saw the flash. The flash from coming from the barrel and hit me right here, and then all of a sudden he said, "Get out." I said, "I will," and then. Moments later, just within seconds, half a second, he shot me in the leg, and he said, "Get out again." I said, "I will, I will." He shot me in the leg.
And then you were begging for people to go get help, call 911. When the paramedics showed up, they looked at your injuries, and you overheard them saying that this guy is not going to make it.
I was in the ambulance, and the medics were there, and they said, "He will not live." I popped up my head and said, "Oh, yes, I will." Yeah, that's what I said.
And you did. Why do you think you did?
Well, when I was laying on the ground, to be very candid, all of a sudden 2 angels appeared on either shoulder. And that's what happened. So I'm here today to say I'm living proof that I'm here.
Yeah.
And that's about all I can tell you. That's true. And that's the truth.
Did you believe in angels necessarily before that actually happened to you?
Yes.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Sure did.
Did those angels talk to you? Or just their presence was enough for you to say, okay, it's not time for me to go yet?
It wasn't my time. I've been resurrected. You can say that again.
Yeah.
That's
You
true.
have been resurrected in more ways than one. In fact, you're back in the business today.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Life's very precious, and friends are my most important asset.
Yeah, and friends, in fact, helped you get through all of this.
If it wasn't for my friends, I'll tell you something, there's no way I could make it. And my church community has been just great to me. And all I can say is thank you.
Yeah.
If I talk too much, all I can say is thank you. It's
very emotional. When you stare death in the face, it can change you in many ways. I know that myself from having almost died. But for you, how do you see life differently after almost losing it?
Life is so precious that it's hard to put into words. The only thing I can say is I take life day by day. Whitney Houston, I'm sure you recall, did the remake of the movie The Preacher's Wife.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my most favorite films. And I believe the song goes inch by inch,
mm-hmm.
step by step, day by day, week by week. And it's probably one of the most inspirational films that I've ever seen.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because this morning as I drove into work, the song I was listening to was Inch by Inch, Day by Day. It's a song that I start my day off often with.
I keep it in my car, the CD. And I can only tell you this, A Wonderful Life,
mm-hmm.
I've been blessed in many ways. And I'll tell you one thing for sure. That film, in the spirit of Christmas,
mm-hmm.
Friends and Christmas are so special to me. I can't begin to tell you, because it is. And they're friends and people.
Yeah, not about the material things.
Material things mean nothing.
Yeah. Well,
people
Harry,
have too much stuff.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us today.
Thank you.
But I have to say, a woman can never have too much jewelry. Coming up next, we'll meet a woman who tried to end it all, not once, but twice. Today, she's a living miracle. We'll learn why next. Stay with us.
Clarence! Get me back! Get me back! I don't care what happens to me! Get me back to my wife and kids! Help me, Clarence, please! Please! I want to live again! I want to live again! I want to live again! Please, God, let me live again.
Everyone goes through hard times now and then, but it takes a serious crisis to reach the brink of taking your own life. As a suicide survivor, that's something Sharon Underwood understands all too well. And Sharon, we heard JB say earlier in the show, if you're not okay with what's in here, nothing out there is ever going to fix it. What was the source of your depression to the point where you just wanted to end it all?
For me, Deborah, I have been depressed all of my life. Even as a child, I didn't know what it was like to be happy. And I went through high school, 4 years of college, and was never really told that I was okay, so I didn't feel okay.
Yeah.
And I was really skinny, so I grew up during a time when it was big legs and big hips were what was going on. And I graduated from college.
I was going to say, I'm glad you clarified that, because you say, you know, I was really skinny, and people in the audience are going, and?
But when I graduated from college, I had the degree, but I didn't have the job. And I was so depressed, and I had always been depressed. But
this added to a lifetime of depression.
It really did, and it just mounted.
Yeah. Do you remember the very moment where you said, okay, this is it, I'm tired of dealing with it?
I did. I took a bottle of medication, and I took everything in the bottle.
But you survived. But things didn't necessarily get better for you.
No, they didn't.
In fact, it's almost like things started to snowball. You were diagnosed with an illness, which is the reason why you're in a wheelchair today.
Right. But God has blessed me. I did get to the point where I had to crawl. Doctors didn't believe me. I started having problems with my vision. I couldn't get anybody to believe that there was anything wrong. I was trying to hold down a job. The illness affected my brain function.
What is the illness?
The illness, they are calling it fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue.
Yeah.
But it's so much more than chronic fatigue. And I finally, at 2:30 one morning, they kept saying it's in your head. I said, okay, if it's in my head, I'm going to take my head on a platter to a psychiatric hospital. I got in my car and I took myself to one hospital and told them I would like to be with Jesus because he would treat me so much better. And the lady at the hospital, she was my first angel. And she hugged me. She said, we're going to keep you until you're better. I was so bad until I was in the ICU part of the psychiatric hospital. Mm-hmm. And this doctor walked in with these big glasses on. And he said, I'm looking for Miss Underwood. And I said, that's me. So we went to this room and I started explaining everything to him. Mm-hmm. He said, I'm going to take care of you. And he has done miracles with me.
Right. And your other source of miracles, if you will, comes from the suicide hotline.
Yes. Yes. I think I wore them out.
But they were people who, again, understood.
They did. They did, and they talked me through it. The second time, they talked me out of it. Mm-hmm. They stayed on the phone with me and talked me out of it. So,
as bad as life has been for you, and even to the point where it got worse since your first suicide attempt, why is it still a wonderful life?
Because God constantly had angels all around me. Oh, He had people praying for me. God was building me up for something special.
Do you know what that something special is?
Yes.
What is it?
To be there, to just be a light for people now that are going through things. See, I lost my house in a fire and a tornado in the midst of all that. And I lost family members to cancer in the midst of all of that. God is just...
You kind of realize that even if it's a bad day, I still have a life and the power to change that life.
Yes, and the power to help other people.
Well, thank you. We're glad that you didn't succeed at any one of those attempts, because you're right. Your mission is to let other people know that even in the worst of times, it can get better. Thank you for sharing your story with us this morning. And we want to add that for anyone who is battling depression, first of all, get diagnosed. But if you're at the point of taking your own life, please take the courageous step that Sharon did and call the suicide hotline and get help. Because no matter how bad things may seem, as we've all heard today, life is always worth living. When we come back, it was always a wonderful life for little ZuZu in Bedford Falls, but behind the Hollywood spotlights, the little girl who played her overcame more in childhood than some people suffer in a lifetime. Does she still think it's a wonderful life? We'll find out next.
Christmas present from a very dear friend of mine.
Look, Daddy, teacher says every time a bell rings, an angel gets his wings.
That's right. That's right.
With that famous line, ZuZu stole the hearts of adoring movie fans all over the world and became a part of Hollywood history. But little ZuZu is all grown up now, and she's here today. Please welcome actress Karolyn Grimes. Good morning.
Good morning.
When you made that movie as just a little girl, did you have any idea the impact it had on people around the world?
Oh, no. The movie was not a success when it came out. It was a box office failure. Yeah. So nobody knew how wonderful this movie was going to affect American people.
Right. Not as a little girl, you didn't. As a little girl, you didn't know that. But obviously today, you must hear over and over and over again from people. What do people tell you about that movie?
They share their stories with me about how that movie has affected their lives. Some people have considered suicide and have watched the film. A lot of psychologists have told me that they recommend to their depressed patients that they watch the movie at least once.
Wow.
And it turns their lives around, and it gives them hope.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just...
There were so many
There's a message.
scenes in that movie that I think people can grab hold to.
Oh, yes.
And what was Jimmy Stewart's favorite scene?
Jimmy Stewart's favorite scene was in Nick's bar when he said a prayer, and he said, God, I'm not a praying man.
Yeah.
But I'm at the end of my rope.
In fact, we have that scene, and we'd like to take a look at it right now.
Great.
God. Oh, God. Dear Father in heaven, I'm not a praying man, but if you're up there and you can hear me, show me the way. I'm at the end of my rope, right? Show me the way, oh God.
Karolyn, your life has not been a bed of roses. Are there times when you've kind of referred either consciously or subconsciously back to this movie for inspiration?
Yes, there have been many times. No, my life has not been wonderful, but I feel like that it's a path that I've had to take.
Yeah.
I do believe that the angels, someone was guiding me throughout my life and gave me the strength to go through a lot of hurdles in life.
A lot of times people assume that you're a Hollywood actress, life is perfect for you. It was not. At an early age, you saw tragedy.
That's true. I was in 16 films. I was on television. I was in a lot of things. It's kind of funny that Mr. Larry mentioned The Preacher's Wife. I was in the original movie, The Bishop's Wife, with Cary Grant and David Niven. But I was in a lot of films, and I disappeared. Well, what happened to me was very simple. My mother got very sick, and she died when I was 14. And then my father was killed in an automobile accident when I was 15. So I became an orphan and a ward of the court.
Right.
They shipped me to a little town in the Midwest in Missouri. There were 900 kids in my high school class at LA High. And in this little town, there were 900 people.
What kept you going?
Well, somehow or other, I had an inner strength. There was someone that gave me the courage to go on and told me, yes, an angel told me there was more in life for me. And so I would go to bed every night and I would pray to God to help me, and I would visualize myself happy and what I wanted in life. I'd see it every night.
You had the death of your parents to deal with, and then you had a death to deal with that is probably the hardest thing a parent ever has to go through.
Well, that's very true. I had also encountered two husbands that had died. One after 25 years of marriage, but probably the most devastating thing that ever happened to me was to lose my 18-year-old son. The worst thing was that he did commit the act of suicide.
Yeah. Had you ever seen that movie and then talked to you about it?
No, I did not raise my children on that film.
Yeah.
I was a Betty Crocker. I raised 7 kids, you know. I lived in the kitchen, the laundry room, and the car. Yeah. My life was not Hollywood. My Hollywood days were in the basement.
Yeah.
And I raised my children. So I didn't really think that I thought it would be bragging if it wasn't important to me that because I was in these films.
But you got through with the same strength that you got through losing other loved ones. And again, that's the angel in your life. And then you met this angel on earth.
Well, I kind of did. Yeah. The angels pushed us together, that's for sure, because there's no coincidences. It happened.
Yeah. Your husband,
yes,
who is with us this morning, and you met him coincidentally where?
At the American Association of Suicidology's National Convention in Memphis.
Yeah.
I was the keynote speaker, and he was a psychologist attending the conference. And we felt drawn together. Some of the things I said, his philosophies agreed with, and we had a lot in common. And what we do today is try to touch people's lives. We practice the message from the movie It's a Wonderful Life,
right,
that each man's life touches another. And it's so important to give them hope and to share with them. You've been in their shoes. And
in your new book,
there is hope.
Yeah, absolutely, as we've seen today. In your new book that you have out, what is that the message that you want people to get from this book?
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
I'm a happy person. Actually, he wrote the book about my career in the business.
Yeah.
And a little biography there tells a little bit about my life. But I just want people to know that it is a wonderful life and not to take it for granted, to live each moment and share. Give of yourself to other people, and it'll come back to you 1,000 times over.
Yeah, and learning to focus on what I had to do when I lost my brother is to focus on all the good times that we had together as opposed to focusing on him not being here in the literal sense right now. And for that, even if it was just 5 minutes, for that, it was actually 21 years, but for that, I'm thankful.
It is true.
Yeah.
And one of the things you can always remember that you can ring a bell. and that gives that person wings.
Yeah. Thank
Makes
you
you feel like you're doing something.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with a very special treat, so don't go away. All my guests for sharing their wonderful lives with us today. And before we go, we want to honor a Bedford Falls tradition that is the spirit of giving. And JB, we understand that you never had a Christmas tree in your home.
No.
Well, guess what? You'll have one in your home now. Compliments of Bearings. You're taking this tree home.
Oh!
Merry Christmas. And now we'll end the show in another tradition. And Karolyn, the song at the end of the show was for Auld Lang Syne.
Yes.
And did you memorize all those words
No,
back then?
I did not.
You never
Frank
did?
Capra didn't teach me, and I made a fool of myself. Every time I watch it, I'm embarrassed.
Well, get ready to be embarrassed again because we're asking you to sing along with us this morning for Auld Lang Syne. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, the acquaintance be